Hey everyone, how's it going? Today we're going to take a look at what goes into a script that we're working with and how we do some of the things we do. So hang on with me and we're going to take a look at Eulogy. Hi, my name's Eagle. I am the publisher and the line editor here at No Earth Comics, and today we're going to be taking a look at one of our scripts and going into it and explaining why certain things happen the way they do, how things work within the company, and why certain things are just done. So, Eulogy is going to be one of the ones that we're coming out with in 2018, and the main character, Carol Adams, is also known as Major Bombshell, or sometimes just Bombshell, or American Bombshell, or Atomic Bombshell, depending on which era she's in. So what we're going to be doing is looking at the script and how it's coming together. Now, we do all of our work in Google Docs, but we transfer back and forth to a program called Comic Life 3, which I've already done a video on. And Comic Life 3 is what dictates the script setup that we're using. So the first thing that you'll notice is we're using that everything is left justified. And I mean absolutely everything. Nothing is centered. Everything is left justified. That is because right here where it says page 1, the program will recognize that that is a page break and put it in. Here where it says panel 1, the program will recognize that that is a panel, and it'll stick a panel icon off to the side. Where it says caption, it'll recognize that it's a caption, a text box, and stick a text box off to the side. And anything else that it has, such as this, it will stick a word balloon off to the side. Oh, wait, with the exception of sound effects. And those are handled through SFX, and it will stick the sound effect dialog box off to the side. So that's what we're dealing with here. And the first thing that I want to do is point out that when we are, let me move myself over to the corner up here so that I can get myself out of the way. And I'm going to shrink it a little bit because this is what y'all want to look at, not my face. Okay, so what we're dealing with here is a simple script. And there's a couple of things to go over here. But over here on this side, we have comments. And these comments are very important because this is the way that the editorial board talks to the writers and the artists. And in this case, the current writer on this is Picard. She's working on a script that was originally written by Bill Colum, and Bill has been on hiatus, so since we've needed the script finished, Picard's gone ahead and stepped up and done some final editing on it. What we're looking at now is the pencil roughs for the first page. And we're going to page back up here where you can take a look. So each one of these panels, Ube Gabriel, our artist, has duplicated and done the roughs for. And in some of these cases, we have had the panels redrawn because this is part of the editorial process. The script has changed in some way since the panels started being drawn. In most cases, what we're going to do is we're going to adapt the script to the artist's strengths and weaknesses. And so if there's something that the artist is having a problem drawing, we're going to rewrite the script a little bit to take that into account. If there's something the artist draws extremely well, we're going to rewrite the script to take that into account. The reason for this is, well, obviously what we're using is new artists and new writers. So a lot of times what we want to do is try and make the script and the artwork blend together better, and that's part of our job as an editorial board. So this is still in the rough stage, and here's something I want to point out. Looky here. Hello. I put up these pages. If there's anything you would like me to change, just let me know. This is an artist with the right attitude. The same attitude is what we're looking for from writers. If there's anything you would like me to change, just let me know. This is the attitude that we want from all of our collaborators, because this is part of the collaboration process. This is part of you and we trying to get the best possible comic out of this. For instance, there's still one thing that needs to change on this panel here, and that is that we have a slight problem. Whoops. Sorry, I was trying to be fancy here and it's not working well. Anyway, as a point of fact here on this particular part of the script has changed because once we saw the artwork, we realized that we were having a disconnect because Shell Shock, the character here kneeling down beside Major Bombshell, has super strength. It's not a lot of super strength, but it is super strength. So his super strength would allow him to pick her up and carry her away from this particular problem. So we're going to have to put him in the distance in order for this particular scene to work. And this is just some of the things that come across as we start building the comic. And this is part of the reason why the editorial board stays involved with the comic. The editorial board is involved with the comic from the day the pitch comes in until the day the comic is printed. Okay, our job starts when the pitch comes in, and our job is not finished until it's printed. And sometimes it's not finished then, because if there are edits that we find after it's printed, and there usually are one or two, then those are going to have to be corrected for the next printing. So the editorial board is very much part of this process, and this is part of what we're here to catch. So on page 3, this is where we're going with our splash page. Now then, this is an unusual thing in the fact that splash pages are usually on an even page. on an odd page, not an even page. This is going to be the right-hand side of the book. So we're going to have this page, but the reveal is on the next page anyway. So we're okay with that on this particular comic. And on the reveal, we find out that the entire book and part of the narration so far is being given at Carol Adams' funeral in the modern day. And so that's the reason for the book's name of Eulogy. So this is the reveal. And rather than doing a big splash page for the reveal, we do an intensive funeral page. So now, once again, these are pencil roughs. And you'll notice all of the yellow areas here. These are very much part of the process of this, because each one of these is indicating that that particular chunk of text has been pegged for a comment over here. So here, we've got a little tiny art direction here. And since we're still in the pencils phase, this is a lot easier to do. Now, then one of the things I want to go over with this is the concept of writing a script is, it's not what most people think it is. It's not. Look, there's a very good scene from a movie called The Gambler. And in that scene, Mark Wahlberg goes on about, of course, writing's easy. Everybody does a little bit of it. And then he, and then he goes ahead and goes into a philosophy I don't share. But before he goes into that philosophy, he mentions that before you become a Olympic pole vaulter, first you have to be a what? You have to be a pole vaulter. And and his character is trying to get across that if you don't have genius in the particular field that you are going after, stay home. And I don't agree with that, but the idea that genius, or never mind genius, the idea that skill and talent in writing is common is pure BS. It's not true. And just because you have the ability to string some sentences together and string those sentences into a cohesive paragraph, and just because you've done a little technical writing, or you write a blog, or you write really good Facebook posts or whatever, doesn't make you a writer. It makes you somebody who can string sentences together and follow the basic rules of grammar. What makes you a writer is understanding the craft, understanding what the elements of fiction are, understanding how all of these things work together, and understanding things such as the pacing of a story, the structure of a story. The reason that Chris Nolan's Batman films work and Zack Snyder's films do not work is not because of visual, because they're both brilliant visually. It's not because of characterization. They both do fantastic characterization, Murderous Superman aside. What it's because of is one of them understands story structure and how to draw the audience into the story, and the other one understands spectacle. And there's been too much spectacle in comic books. We're trying to put some story into it. So the whole thing about Eulogy here is this book is based on a legacy. Carol Adams is dead. On page 4, we find out she's dead. She is going to be dead. We're not bringing her back. She is not going to suddenly resurrect. Now then, we're going to tell a lot of Carol Adams stories. But we're going to tell all of them from the viewpoint of people in the present talking about the past. And the overriding theme of the series is going to be how perception and time changes things. In our first issue, a lot of what we are told comes from shell shock. And shell shock is, he has a lot of emotional attachment towards Carol. He has altered history in his mind. And so what we're going to have is a whole bunch of unreliable narrators. So that when we might tell the same story twice in two different issues, and it'll be a different story because it's different people telling it, and they remember things differently. So if we get something from Shell Shock in one issue, and then we get the same story being told by the villain in the next issue, what we're going to see is a very different version of the story. So that's the theme, is the way perception and time changes things. And we can do this because we're not telling a traditional comic book story. We are telling memories. We are telling narration. We are telling reminiscences. These are not going to be standard stories. So this is going to be built into the entire concept of the series. And this is part of the hook of it. So every single issue will follow this particular theme. Regardless of what the individual issue is about, the theme is what's going to tie all of the issues together. Now, and if you're sitting there going, well, theme isn't important. No, theme is the most important thing that you're doing in your story, because theme is what your story is about. It's not the plot, it's not the setting, it's not the characters, it's not what happens. Theme is what your story is about. And if you don't know that, if you do not understand what the theme of your story is before you send us the pitch, before you write the pitch, if you don't know what the theme is, we're going to treat you a little roughly, because what we want to know is what's the theme. So in this case, the theme is subtle. We've got other books where the theme is right out there. In Law of the Jungle, I actually stated the theme on the third page just because. It's not something I normally do when I'm writing, but in this particular case, I felt that the theme was close enough to the plot that it was worth stating. So part of what we're doing here on these two pages, page 4 and page 5, is introducing the narrators, the storytellers for the next few issues. We're introducing people that have been part of Carol's life and that are going to be important in the story and in following this theme. And here we have our viewpoint character. Now, if you are not familiar with literary critique terms and you're wanting to be a writer, you should get familiar with them, because these are very important to being able to discuss things with the board and being able to discuss things with yourself. Because when you talk to yourself about your story, you need to be able to understand what you're doing in your story. So in this panel right here, we have Hope Bradell. Now, and Hope is appearing in two books. She's appearing in this one, and she's appearing in No Earth Observations. Hope is our viewpoint character, because Hope has never met Carol Adams. Hope is a reporter for the Metahuman Observer, but Hope is wanting to write a book, and she is going to be our viewpoint character. She is our entry into the world of Carol Adams. And the reason that she is here is to provide the reader with somebody that they can identify with, because she doesn't know what's going on and the reader doesn't know what's going on. So as Hope learns things, the reader is going to learn things. That's her purpose. The other person here is Norman. Now, Norman is Carol's second husband. And Norman is going to be what we refer to as a touchstone character, because Norman has simply been a very devoted, loving husband to a superhero. And through him and other people's reactions to him, we're going to get a good idea of who Carol was. So things like this, the story structure is important. And if you think I'm being too deep on this, if you think I'm being too complicated or complex on this, I want you to think about something from an artist's point of view. Would you attempt to draw a comic book without understanding anatomy, without understanding perspective, without understanding camera angles, without understanding color theory, without understanding all of the technical things that go into drawing? Writing is no different. You need to understand the technical aspects of writing before you attempt to sit down and do it. Otherwise, you are going to be blowing away all of the structure and all of the wonderful things that people have developed in their analysis of literature to let you write better. The tools, the techniques, and the knowledge that is out there is yours for the taking. You just have to go research it. So, here, we're going on to page 6, and this is something very important. This little scene here, and this is a grand total of 3 panels. Okay? We see these 3 panels, and I'm going to go ahead and page down to the actual artwork. These 3 panels right here. One little inset panel, and this third panel. This is called a character beat. And these are very important because in one 3-panel setup, we are establishing something about Emily Curtis Fireworks. We are establishing that her and Norman are not friends. We are establishing that they are suspicious of each other. We are establishing that there is a relationship there that is going to be explored later on in the series. And we do this in a way that shows personality from both of them. So this is called a beat. And this one little beat right here lets us, with a grand total of 2 words, Norman, Emily, see so much about the personalities of the 2 people involved. The little inset picture of the clenched fist lets us see the personality of Norman. It lets us see the personality of Emily. This is important. These little things like this are important because character is one of the 5 elements, and you only have 22 pages an issue to play with these 5 elements, and all of them are important, and all of them have to do one thing. They have to advance the story. If you are putting stuff into the script that does not advance the story, it needs to be taken out. And we're going to do that, by the way. We're going to say, why is this in here? And if you don't have a reason for it, it comes out. And the reason is 22 pages. We want to give the customers their money's worth on these pages. So, in this one 3-panel scene, we get an idea of 2 of the characters that are going to be important later on in the series. And it's a teaser, okay? Because nothing about this one little beat is going to be resolved this issue. It is a setup for issues to come. It's a setup for things to come. And in the rest of the page, we get a good beat with Hope, because Hope is going to approach Fireworks, and she is going to have a conversation with her. And from that conversation, we get a good idea of who she is. I don't have to sit there and create a scene that specifically, or the writer doesn't have to sit there and create a scene that specifically tries to paint Hope as this particular type of person, because we're doing it in a scene that advances the plot. We're doing it in a scene that advances the story. So this is important. And, well, let's go down here a little bit. Hope is holding out her card, and she says, I'm Hope Riddell with the MetaHuman Observer. And we immediately get an idea of who Emily Curtis is because she interrupts Hope. I've sued the Observer 3 times. It's a sensationalist rag. This tells us exactly who Emily Curtis is in a broad stroke. Now we're going to refine it. But this is one of the things about comic books, and in fact in writing in general, that you need to understand. Stereotypes are useful. They are your best friend. Everybody is so upset about stereotypes these days, but what they don't understand is that stereotypes exist for a reason. And the reason they exist is because there is a significant visible portion of the population that fits that stereotype. By this one little shot here where Hope is interrupted by fireworks, we get an idea of who Fireworks is in one single line. And we can go back and refine it later. We can go back and play with the paint. We can play with the brush strokes. We can play with the shape and form. But we have just laid down a big broad swath of paint that helps define who Emily Curtis is. And this is, once again, a character beat. And in fact, most of your scenes are about character beats. And we have what's called a turning point in this conversation. I'm going to point that out for you as well. She says, I've sued the Observer 3 times. It's a sensationalist rag. I'd use it for a cage liner, but I'm afraid my birds would object. This is a complete and total shutdown of Hope. Does Hope take this as a shutdown? No, she says, Miss Curtis, I'm new, but I'm a good writer. I really want to interview you for a book on Carol Adams. And here we have the turning point of the conversation. Because instead of just keeping the shutdown that she's already put on her in place, she says a tell-all book. In other words, the conversation is now turned. The emotions have now turned. She is no longer being dismissive. Now she's interested. And this is what conversation in a comic book is. This is what dialogue in a comic book is. It is a switching back and forth of emotions. It is combat. It is an action scene done in emotions. Not in physicality, but emotionality. So this is what is going on right here is Hope has said the one thing that gets Emily's attention. I want to interview you for a book. A tell-all book. And in this, we see the scene change. And this is important. And further down in panel 7, we get something else. I consent only because it's Carol. If you pardon the pun, I'm Carol's old flame. Call my office, we'll set up a time. And here's the way that this goes on the page. Hope presenting her card, her being dismissive, Hope presenting her case, her relenting, and now we get this panel that'll be 4 lines of Emily's dialogue, which gives us more of an insight into Emily. And so this is why the art and the writing need to marry together so well, is because we've got the stern expression here and the kinder expression here. And this is where we will make this emotional turn in the story. So this is something that you need to understand. This is something that if you are going to be doing comic book creation, you need to realize that this is not easy. Let me take that back. Comic books are easy to do if you're willing to just toss stuff out there. But if you're wanting to write well, if you're an artist and you're wanting to tell stories well, there is so much more to learn as a writer than the English language and grammar. There is so much more to learn as an artist than anatomy and how to do a pinup. Because those things from the art point of view and the writing point of view do not teach you how to tell a story. So as writers and as artists, we have to practice. We have to learn our craft. We have to learn how to tell a story. And I'm going to be doing a number of videos on different aspects of this, and I will be using scripts that we're working on, pages that we're working on, such to do this, because this is something that I feel is really, really ignored or given short shift in the comic book world today. So I've covered character today. I've covered the theme. I've covered plotting. What I haven't covered today is setting, and I haven't covered conflict. Conflict in this book is going to be rather difficult because a lot of the conflict is going to appear to be man versus man. But in actuality, the conflict is going to be man versus himself, because Carol has been conflicted her entire career. And she started out as an accidental recipient of a super soldier program, and she has never been happy with her role. And so she's had some trouble. And so a lot of the story of Carol is going to be man versus himself, or in this case, woman versus herself. But the setting's no earth. So obviously we've got things going on such as I'm having to remind the artist that the characters are depicted as wearing guns. Please put the guns on them. We're having to set it up to where, for instance, this picture of Shell Shock, he's wearing his costume underneath a trench coat because it's a memory. But the idea of people walking around in costumes is not that unusual. One of the things that we are always looking for is, how does this particular story fit into No Earth? And this story fits in very well because it's based on an idea that I had originally come up with, and then it got passed off to Bill to do the script. He had a grand total of 5 pages of script for me to go on. And he's done an excellent job of making the story his own. P. Carr has come in and done minor edits here and there just to bring it in line with the comments that were being made. The core of the story is still Bill's. So, in the end, there's a lot to do on a story like this. There's a lot to take into account. There's just a lot to work with. And it's not easy. There's nothing about this that's easy. And people that walk into this thinking that this is easy, that this is something that they can just pick up in an instant, that, you know what, I've never written a comic before, but they're just comics. It can't be that hard. No. There's a lot to it. And as an editorial board, we're going to hold you to that. We're going to hold you to the promise that your script has. And if in the end we can't work anything out on it, we're going to drop the script. We're not going to publish something that we don't feel good putting our name on. We're not going to publish something that we don't feel good doing the investment of time and money and energy necessary to bring the comic book to print and then to try and sell that comic. So I wanted to give y'all a look into part of the process. I want y'all to help understand the editorial board and what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I want you to see what a script looks like up close and personal and get a chance to see what it is that we do. So, thank you very much for tuning in, and we're going to talk again.